Hey guys, welcome to What's Out There. I'm your host, Grim Webster, and tonight's episode, Tyler and I talk about the Loveland Frogmen, the Flatwoods Monster, and a few other things that just happen to pop into our minds as we're recording. So, thanks for listening, and sit back and enjoy. How's it going?
Good. You?
So far, so good.
Good.
Where did you want to start tonight? Did you want to go ahead and start with the Loveland Frogmen?
Yeah, we can go ahead and start with that one. I was just refreshing myself on it here a few minutes ago. Basically, the Loveland Frog was something that happened in Ohio back in 1955 in this little town called Loveland, which is it's in western Ohio, I'd say more on the south side. Basically, this businessman is driving down the road and he comes to this overpass and he looks up and there's 3 to 4 frog-like creatures standing out there that are about 4 feet tall. Instead of hair, they have wrinkles. They have really wide mouths without lips. He said that they have lopsided chests and pretty much just said they look like frogs, only standing up. He also said that one of them had a metal bar that would emit sparks, and that after he left, there's a strong odor of alfalfa and almonds. Have you ever heard of this before?
Yeah, I had heard of the Loveland Frog. It was always called the Loveland Frog. I'd never heard it referred to as frogmen, and I'd never really had the whole story before, but I remember growing up, because I grew up in Ohio, I would always hear the story, because I guess it's kind of like the big one for Ohio. But
Yeah.
I would always hear little bits and pieces, but I never really looked into it until recently, and I was kind of surprised to find out that it was a group of little amphibian-like creatures.
Yeah.
The curious thing, though, is I've got, I think, 4 different cases that I found where somebody spotted them, and in all 4 cases, they all went back into the Miami River, which feeds directly into the Ohio River. And I don't know if you've ever heard any stories about the Ohio River, but in the Ohio River, they have catfish and carp that are big enough to swallow people whole. And they had a diver down there doing welding and underwater welding and stuff on one of the bridges, and they sent him down in the cage and everything. And when he came back up, he was just freaking out, said he would never go down ever again because there was a fish that was big enough to swallow him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just that in the Ohio, plus there's a couple other things. I think I could probably do a show on the Ohio River by itself because there's a bunch of things that just go with the Ohio River. And I thought it was kind of cool that these things are somewhat associated with the Ohio River.
I read a story at one point that some people thought were associated with the Loveland Frog that actually happened in the Ohio River. The story goes that I think sometime in the 70s, this woman was swimming in the river. Her friends were on the shore, and all of a sudden she felt something grab her leg and she got tugged down. So she fights her way back up to the surface, but it still got a hold of her and it keeps trying to pull her down. And finally she kicks it free and swims back to the shore. She gets back to the shore, she looks down at her leg, and it looks like a webbed handprint where it grabbed onto her.
I don't think I've ever heard of that one, but like I said, there's a lot of stuff surrounding the Ohio River, and the Ohio River goes on for a while. So, I mean, yeah.
This was down in the Cincinnati area.
Right? Yeah, that's where I think that's where the big fish was seen too, right across the bridge that connects Ohio and Kentucky across the river.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was researching the Frogmen, I was thinking to myself the whole time, man, I should do a show on just the Ohio River itself.
Yeah.
I want to say there's one about a police officer too that saw him, or no, there was two police officers, right?
Yeah, correct. That happened in 72, and since then the police officers have come forward and said, this got blown way out of proportion. That's not actually what we saw. But basically, what the false report was that kind of got leaked, apparently by some of their friends or whoever, said that the creature was 3 to 4 feet tall, 50 to 75 pounds, leathery skin, possible wet matted hair on its body that made it look textured, a possible tail, a head and face like a frog or lizard, and could leap over the road's guardrail down to the Little Miami River. In 2001, Officer Mark Matthews, who had, of course, has since retired, gave an interview and said there was no monster. He said what he actually saw was not leathery and did not have wet matted fur. It was not 3 to 5 feet tall. It did not stand erect. He said the animal I saw was obviously some type of lizard that somebody had as a pet that either got too large for its aquarium, escaped by accident, or simply got tired of it. It was less than 3 feet in length, ran across the road, and was probably blinded by the headlights. It presented no aggressive action. He said he attempted to shoot it to back up the account of his partner sighting who saw it a few nights prior, but the lizard got away and probably died.
So, what do you think? Do you think they actually saw something and then tried to go back on it? Or do you think they maybe tried to play up something that they heard about from, 20 years earlier?
Well, I figure they probably saw something, but I think his report that came out in 2001 was probably what actually happened. Because, if things just get out like that, sometimes, and the media takes hold and it gets, sent around and gossiped a lot, details start getting changed around to where it's not quite true, and it starts getting more elaborate and more, more extravagant and all this stuff, when really it was just a lizard that this guy saw across the road. But it's not uncommon either for somebody to have a pet like that and be like, oh my gosh, this thing's 3 feet long.
Right.
We just don't have room for it anymore, and just for whatever reason set it out where they know it's gonna, it's Ohio, it's gonna get cold, it's gonna die.
Right. Yeah, I've actually seen people that they'll get snakes, and I know a guy, he's got a 6-foot boa constrictor, and if it were to get any bigger than 6 foot, he would probably have to get rid of it, because at 6 feet it's already hard to manage.
Yeah, boa constrictors are strong. Boas are strong snakes. I have a corn snake right now. He'll get about 3 or 4 feet long. He's just a baby right now. But, people hear, oh my gosh, that's a 6-foot snake. And they think it's like, they think it's like a really huge snake. But really, if you look at a snake like that, they're not that big around. A 6-foot snake isn't going to wrap around you and kill you.
Right.
No matter how hungry it is, it might bite you. That's one thing, but there's no way a 6-foot snake is really that strong enough. Now, where you get into trouble with is the Burmese pythons, African rock pythons, anacondas, which I don't think are legal in the United States. And all, the big ones like that, where, you have to have another person in the room because they can kill you and they will eat you. But, those snakes are just so massively powerful. I won't ever want anything that big.
Yeah. So you think that the police officers' reports were just maybe an overgrown lizard, and they were originally just trying to play up on an old story?
Yeah, it's very possible, especially, people, it's human nature to play up on things sometimes. Like those 2 cops that said they shot a Bigfoot a few years ago.
Right.
And really it was just a costume.
Oh, completely off topic, but speaking of Bigfoot, have you heard about the guy in Texas that claims he shot one?
Yeah, I saw a link for it, but I didn't actually read about it at all. I just looked in the comments and saw that people were saying that he's claimed the same thing like 2 or 3 times. And
Well, with this one, apparently it was a couple years ago that he shot it, and according to the story that I heard, the government took it away to test it, or somebody had taken it to run tests on it, and they've had it for like maybe a year or two, and he was finally able to file all the paperwork to get it back, and he actually released some photos of it. The one that I saw was a really tight close-up picture of the face, and just by that I mean, if it's not real, it's really pretty good effects. You know, like probably a little more involved than just your standard latex mask.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd love for something to come out like that and be like, oh, that's actually real. But you always have to have a healthy dose of skepticism, which is
Right.
Especially with somebody who's apparently made the claims 3 or 4 times and all that.
I know. I think in the beginning he actually made a couple fake Bigfoot sighting videos just for fun. And like I don't know if he ever claimed they were real or not, but I know he faked a couple in the beginning, but now he's claiming that this one is 100% real.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've only seen the one picture, and on one hand, I hope it is real, but on the other hand, I kind of hope not, because if you get a bunch of people in the woods with guns trying to shoot at a Bigfoot, I mean, somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, and that actually just happened maybe a month or 2 ago.
Yeah, I heard about that.
People were out Bigfoot hunting, one guy got shot.
Yeah.
I don't think he got really hurt too bad, but
I think that's why, I don't know why somebody would want to go out and aim to kill a Bigfoot. I mean, obviously it would be easier to prove the existence if you've got a body, but I mean, I don't know. Do we really need to kill them? What if there's not that many left? Do you really want to cut down the population of quite possibly one of the most elusive species to exist?
I think that killing one would probably be the best way for us to preserve what there would be left of them, because we get all these footprints, we get all this kind of stuff, and still nobody believes it. So and right now Bigfoot technically doesn't exist in the eyes of the government. Now, if we were to kill one, bring it in and have tests and okay, this is a new species. It could then be put on the endangered species list in the United States. It could be protected. It'd become a felony for anybody to kill one. And there'd be all these protections in place. I mean, we'd be able to study them,
Sure.
what makes them up and all that, where their habitats are and all that. That way we could keep them safe from people in the future. Because, I mean, who knows, how many people actually, assuming that they're real, how many people have taken pot shots at them and wounded them enough for it to kill them, but never found them.
Right, yeah. I think that would probably be the most, I guess, the fastest way to get something done about it. But at the same time, I used to be a hunter. I would hunt all the time, so I mean, I understand the importance of gun safety, but a lot of people that go out really don't, and a lot of people I've noticed don't really have a lot of common sense. And I think the more people you get in one area trying to shoot at something that may or may not actually be there, the more likely they're going to shoot each other.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not saying go out and have hunts for it, but like, say if I was sitting in the woods, sitting up in a tree, saying deer hunting or something, and I saw something like that walk across me. I mean, I'm in Northeast Ohio. There's no bears up here. I give it a good fair warning. Hey, if that's a person, you need to tell me now. And if not, I'd probably take a shot at it.
I think if it was a Bigfoot and you yelled "hey" at it, it might run away.
Well, yeah, depending on how close it was. I mean, depending on how fast it could run, really.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard some reports that they move pretty fast, but I've seen some of the videos that haven't been conclusively proven fake yet, and I don't know. Some of those look like they move kind of slow, but at the same time, being so huge and having such a such a large stride, I would imagine that they'd be able to move fairly fast.
Yeah, especially if they needed to. I mean, even people when they get that big adrenaline rush, I mean, they can run very very fast and make and lengthen out their stride even
Oh
more.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't doubt that I could run away fast. You know, it'd just be one of those things where wouldn't want to kill somebody that was out stupidly walking through the woods in a gorilla costume during deer season.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. Was there anything else we needed to cover on the frogmen?
No, I think we covered all that. I mean, there hasn't been a confirmed sighting since '55. The one in '72, the guy said wasn't true. I mean, then there's that one down on the Ohio River, and I think that's all the ones I've
I want to
seen.
say there was a farmer at one point too, but I think that was right around the same time as the sighting in the 70s.
Okay.
But yeah, since then I don't think there's been anything.
No.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Flatwoods Monster. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the ones that's been around for a while. It's just one of those big ones for the United States. You want to go ahead and get into
Yeah,
it?
yeah. From what I understand, actually, when I first heard about it, I pictured it more of like a swamp monster, or like a monster in the woods or whatever. But
Hmm.
the more I went and looked into it, it actually looks more like a UFO encounter. Um,
Yeah.
in the early 50s, a group of kids witnessed a bright object crossing the sky. They went to their mom's house and told her about it, and then from there she took the kids to try to track it down. Um, they finally they finally found it, and they saw a large ball of fire about 50 feet off to the side there, and there was a pungent mist that made their eyes and nose burn. To the left of the object, there was a flashing light or a light flashing towards them, and there was a creature there, and it emitted a shrill hissing sound before it kind of glided towards them and chased them away. So obviously they all ran away, and the mom that had taken the kids out there to find it, she contacted newspapers and places like that, and eventually they got some people to go back out there the next morning. And the second time they went out, they discovered two elongated tracks in the mud, as well as traces of a thick black liquid. And they said that that was possible signs of a saucer landing, but they also said that the two tracks could also be like something from a pickup truck. So shortly after that, investigators came through and checked it out. Got a number of accounts from people who claim to have experienced the same thing, or a number of people who had seen the light or smelled the acrid mist and gotten sick. And basically, all in all, it appears um, that the description of the creature that kind of came out of the mist at him, they say that it was about 10 feet tall, had a red face that appeared to glow, and a green body. They describe its head as having bulging non-human eyes, and either being shaped like a heart or having a large heart-shaped cowl behind it. They describe the body as being man-shaped and clad in a dark pleated skirt. They later described it as being green. Some accounts record that the creature had no visible arms, while others describe it as having short, stubby arms with claw-like fingers. And upon further study of the effects of people who came near the mist, a lot of them had irritation of the nose and throat, and some swelling of the throat, and those are actually some of the same symptoms as mustard gas. So to me, it sounds like on one hand, it could be an extraterrestrial encounter, But on the other hand, maybe a government experiment.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
If you look into all these things, it's like the gas and all that. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure exactly where Flatwoods is. Is that
West
in a
Virginia,
swamp
I believe.
area? Yeah. Yeah, but do you know if that's a swamp area? It looks like it's
Uh,
right in the middle of Appalachia.
I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say that it is.
Okay, now, assuming that's in a swamp area, I mean, you got the gas and all that, which swamps have been known, for
Right.
swamp gas, which sounds like it would give that kind of effect off. You got, I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically where the swamp, where that methane catches on fire sometimes, and you see it through the woods as swamp lights. But no, putting all that aside, and assuming that this was actually something, to me, it sounds like more of a UFO rather than anything else. Because I mean, and then it sounds to me like a classical, alien coming towards you. And a lot of people have actually classified this as a close encounter of the third kind. The first sign I think is like seeing a UFO or something like that. I can't remember what the contact with them, which is what they would call this one.
I'm actually looking at Flatwoods, West Virginia right now on Google Maps. It looks, for the most part, pretty heavily wooded. It looks like a pretty small town, but I'm not seeing anything that looks swampy there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's right up in right where the Appalachian Mountains go to. That wasn't a swamp land. That would be one way to dismiss all those lights. I was just reading here also that there was a meteor shower that night, and that could have also been the light.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It looks pretty densely wooded, and it looks like Flatwoods itself is only just a couple of streets that just runs through a big chunk of forest. So really, it could have been anything.
Yeah. I think in 2000, somebody, which it seems more and more looking at stuff like the early 2000s were a big time for people to investigate different stuff. It seems like there was a big resurgence and interest in the paranormal, which I think has a lot to do with the availability of the internet.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Being able to connect. But apparently somebody went out there and he concluded that what actually was observed was a barn owl. Which if you look at a picture of a barn owl, its face is heart shaped, and he said that the people probably startled it when it was up on a limb, and it raised out its wings, making it look like it had shoulders, and then the no arms or the short arms with the claws on the end would have been the talons.
I guess, yeah. But a lot of them say that it was like 10 feet tall, though, so I guess maybe it would have to be flying at them.
Yeah, it would have been up in the air or on a tree limb or something. But I mean that's all conjecture. I mean you would never really know unless you were actually there. But, I mean I know I've been walking back through the woods at in the dark, and you say you hear a fox, which if you've never heard a fox, they're terrifying.
They are,
yeah. Hear a rabbit run through the brush, and you think, I mean, you said you're a hunter. I mean, you know how loud, especially chipmunks, can be. I mean, like, I don't know how many times I've been out hunting and thought there was a huge deer standing right by him, and I look down and there's, two chipmunks playing with each other in the leaves. So, I mean, it could have been overhyped imagination here, or it could have been, an actual close encounter of the third kind here with actual contact, which, I want to believe that's that, but, it's also human nature to overreact to things sometimes, especially when we're scared.
Right. One of the things I like about the whole Flatwoods Monster thing is that the town of Flatwoods actually has a celebration every year, and that starts it'll start on a Friday and end on Sunday, and it's just like a weekend of like live music, and they have a monster museum and stuff like that. I thought that was that was pretty cool, because I mean, really not too many places that have something like that will really celebrate it. And most of the times when they do, you end up with something like Roswell, where everything's like alien themed and it's all touristy and just kind of, I don't know, it just seems kind of like they killed it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's cool that every year they have a festival. And
Yeah, I think that is pretty cool too that they actually come on and do all that.
another thing though, and I hadn't really realized it until I started researching, is that they've they've put the Flatwoods Monster or something similar to it in a bunch of different video games and TV shows and stuff like that. Did you find anything
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading about it here right now, but I mean, it's just you know, like I said, it's one of those classic American, you know, sightings of something
Right.
unknown. So, you know, of course, it got thrown into all these different games and all that. I mean, I imagine back when it happened, it was a big thing that happened. It hit a lot of newspapers and all that. So, especially with the games that came out around then, and a little bit after, it would have you know, they would have hit on it. I mean, especially with The Simpsons. I'm seeing it's
Oh
on The
yeah,
Simpsons.
yeah.
It
I
was
remember when that episode first came out. It was kind of like an X-Files episode too. They had I
yeah,
guess Mulder and Scully were on that episode of The Simpsons too, so it was kind of like double goodness for you.
yeah,
But yeah, even when they added them into The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, I was always a huge Zelda fan, and like I never thought about it until I started doing research here, and I thought back and I was like, yeah, I guess that really was.
and so you want to sum these two up? Well, what do you think about the Loveland Frog?
Um, well, on one hand, I want to say that I want to believe it because I mean, just all the stuff surrounding the Ohio, uh, you know, and every account ends with these things going back into the river, which, you know, for me, I live pretty close to the Ohio River, right around the Cincinnati area, and you know,
Yeah,
so it I don't know, it kind of feels more personal to me, so I want to believe it, but at the same time, I mean, we've got two out of the four accounts have, you know, they've come back and said no, we were just faking it. So it's kind of hard. On one hand, I want to believe it's real, but on the other hand, I kind of got to say it's fake.
yeah. Well, I mean, with that one, especially the first sighting and the sighting with the woman in the Ohio River, there's not really anything that you could chalk that up to. You know, it's not like, oh, well, there's this other animal that looks like that, and it could be
Right.
that. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, especially with the one with the stick that let off electric
Yeah, I
sparks.
think somebody described it as a wand.
Yeah, yeah, it was described as a one also, but you know, those ones are a little bit less explainable to me. I mean, I figure if any of them actually happened, it would be those two. I mean, especially with a
Right.
handprint. I mean, but of course, somebody could have been making the whole thing up. I mean, I talked a lot about, you know, human nature on here. It's also human nature
Yeah,
to
yeah.
lie. So you kind of that's why whenever I hear about things like this, I just kind of take with a grain of salt. You know, it might be true, but at the same time, I'd rather not be fooled.
Yeah.
You know. And how about the Flatwoods
The
Monster?
Flatwoods Monster, I don't know. I want to say that maybe originally there was something there, like maybe it was an encounter of some sort, but I think after a while it just it got diluted or kind of transformed into something maybe more or less than it was supposed to be. But I think maybe originally it was an encounter.
Yeah. Well, I really like this one example of a or not. It wouldn't be a gray, but an alien making contact. You know, crash landing. You know, stuff out of the movie. You know, um, but really, from what I heard around this time, I was reading that there's a big meteor shower and a lot of them actually made impact. Um, in that area, especially I think Elk Creek, which I believe is in West Virginia, and I also believe is actually in the news from the pollution in the river. But people thought the airplane went down there, and it was right around the same area. So I mean, something that could have crashed. Their account does sound awfully like an owl if you put them both together. It could have been sitting on a tree limb. You got to chalk all this up to a lot of people that were out there that didn't know what was going on, that were probably already scared. As soon as they saw, a house or an owl screeching at them, saw it very, very briefly and then turned around and ran, which is understandable. I would have done the same thing. But, this is just one of those things that you got to kind of factor in the human element into.
Another thing about it that's interesting is just the fact that the illnesses that everybody experienced were the same symptoms you get from being exposed to mustard gas. So, I mean,
yeah,
that kind of makes me want to think that maybe it was some sort of government test or like a test plane or something that either crashed and then by the time they got to it the next morning it had been cleaned up because there wasn't really any debris when they came back to it the second time, or something like that.
Yeah, well, just talking off the top of my head right now. But West Virginia, that whole area is huge into coal mining. So, assuming there might have been an old shaft around the earth,
I didn't even think about that.
Would have that kind of effect. So, I mean, I don't know if there's actually anything around there or not, but just off the top of my head, that could be one way to explain that off. There's also a lot of psychological effects, something like that could happen that can actually manifest themselves physically. I think we were talking about this in our last show, where, I mean, people say, oh, well, I felt this, and everybody, then the next person goes, oh, well, I feel it too. And the next thing you know, everybody's got this irritation in their throats and all that.
That actually reminds me of, it was the Mad Gasser. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, that's actually one I'd like to do a show on at a later time, but that's the Mad Gassers I find very interesting.
Yeah.
It actually happened in 3 different states, I believe.
I think at one point in time they actually they toyed with the possibility of it being mass hysteria like that, where one person freaks out and somebody else freaks out. Like maybe the first couple cases were real and then it just kind of caught on and everybody else thought it happened.
Yeah, the Mad Gasser is one of the very few of these things out there that I actually believe happened. But I also believe that a lot of it played into mass hysteria. But I mean, if you look at the evidence, there were actually broken windows, there were actually tampered windowsills and all that. So I mean, something actually did happen to these people, but once it started happening, in the houses that didn't show any signs of break-ins and all that, it's just panic at that point. You wake up with a little bit of a light head and, oh my gosh, I'm being gassed.
Yeah. I mean, something like that, it could have been just as easy as, maybe not opening the flue on your fireplace all the way. And, you wake up a little dizzy and lightheaded and, suddenly everybody's being gassed.
That's actually one of the more interesting ones when I've actually done a bunch of it, research into myself that really interests me. But that's, I mean, I could get way into that. We can do that at a later.
Yeah, definitely. I also, at some time, I think I might want to do something on Spring-Heeled Jack. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody who hasn't heard of Spring-Heeled Jack. That's one of those really odd
I think,
ones. Jack the Ripper and all that.
I think that one was pretty old. Wasn't that another one that it came from over in England, right?
Yeah, I believe, and he would jump from rooftop to rooftop. And a lot of times, Spring-Heeled Jack is actually associated with Jack the Ripper as the same person. But he basically, if I remember right, Spring-Heeled Jack, the first time he was seen, walked up to a lady and got her attention or whatever, and she turned around and he ripped open her dress with a knife or something like that, and then shot a ball of fire out or like made some kind of fire and then jumped
Yeah, yeah. I
away.
was gonna say he was known to blind people as well with fire and stuff. But
Yeah.
whenever I hear stuff like that, at first thing I want to do is like I want to jump over to writer mode and try to, think of some crazy scenario that could explain it, but at the same time leave it just unexplained enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those old classical ones, Jack the Ripper, Spring-Heeled
Yeah,
Jack. I mean, across the sea over here would be the Jersey Devils, an old
yeah,
one like
yeah.
that.
That's another one we should cover sometime.
Yeah, I mean, we could even do at some point the Ohio Grassman. We talked a little bit about Bigfoot and Sasquatch. It's Ohio's version of
Mm.
that, seen around the Akron area. Not like urban Akron, but that whole wooded, that whole area west of there is completely wooded. There's actually an area around 71 going up here that's called the Bigfoot Triangle.
Really?
Yeah, I know the eastern part is Akron, but I don't know what the other 2 points are, but there's supposedly a bunch of Bigfoot that were seen in that area. And if you go out through there, you can actually, there's a lot of, there's just miles and miles of woods. So, it's possible, I guess. I think it'd also be possible for a bear to walk over from Pennsylvania through that area, too. So, anything's possible. It's just one of those things I'd have to see. In Ohio, I lean towards Bigfoot probably doesn't exist out here, but if you go out to, like, Washington or,
Oh
Oregon
yeah,
and
where
all
it's
that,
just miles
or,
and miles of forest.
yeah,
Yeah, I think if
yeah,
anywhere in the U.S., if there was going to be a Bigfoot, it would be in that area, I would think.
I put it down to the Pacific Northwest and Alaska would be the only two places that something like that could actually really exist.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Speaking of Oregon, by the way, have you seen that video of the creature in the woods? It's
Uh-uh.
it's a video. It's this massive creature. It's very humanoid, basically sitting on a rock, and it looks like it's playing in the sticks and just kind of sitting there. And the camera pans away and sees a kid coming by on a bike, and then right where it gets to the spot where the creature was, the creature is gone. And
Yeah. I think that was posted to Want to
yeah,
Believe.
yeah, I think that's where I saw it. But
Yeah. I didn't look at the video on that, but I looked in the comments and somebody made a really good point of if you're looking at, a Sasquatch, why would you pan away and look at a kid
right.
on a bike?
And I mean,
So,
just looking at it though, like the body, it moves too smoothly. Like
yeah.
I guess like it's CGI basically. There's some 3D rendering on it that you can kind of tell just by the way that it moves smoother than everything else around it. Like we don't move
Right.
quite as smoothly, and it's just I don't know, maybe too fluid is what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah. And that's the big problem with CGI right now is that we haven't found that good balance to make something really organic, I
right.
guess, for lack of a better word, because all animals and humans don't have a completely fluid motion, but they don't have a jerky mechanical
Right,
motion
yeah,
either. They fall just somewhere right in between there, and it'd be hard to pinpoint. But Kamau is just either too jerky or too fluid. I think it probably would have been easier if they just set somebody out there, in a gorilla costume.
right.
Yeah, which I have one, and every time I see a deer cam in a place where I know it shouldn't be, like on one of my buddy's properties that I know aren't his, I just want to get into that costume and just walk by really fast at a kind of far enough distance to where it'll pick me up, but you won't be able to tell the size or anything.
No, it probably as soon as you do that, that's going to end up probably somewhere on One to Believe.
Oh yeah. If you hear in the news that there's some hunter that saw a Bigfoot in Northeast Ohio, that was me walking around this trail cam there.
Have you seen those?
But it wouldn't
Have
be
you
them.
seen those cams where they'll see weird creatures walking in front of them. Some of
Yeah.
those look, I don't know, some of those look kind of real.
Yeah, I read something once, basically explaining why we shouldn't fall into that. Because if anybody's walking through the woods, kids out smoking pot or whatever, and they come across this camera, an easy thing for them to do is to just take the memory card out and go home and Photoshop in a couple images of something creepy there, and then just pop it back in. Then nobody would ever be able to tell the difference unless it was, bad Photoshop or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even think about
But
that. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen some pretty funny stuff off of this, too. Like, I saw one time a smaller doe walking up on his back legs from left to right across the frame. Like, all the way across. I was like, what is this deer doing? Those are pretty cool.
Real quick, kind of getting back to the whole cryptid thing. When I was looking up the frogmen, just the whole thing where they keep going back into the water and back into the water, it makes me think of walk-ins, and it kind of that's one of the theories out there to try to explain stuff like Bigfoot, that maybe they're actually from like a universe or a dimension that kind of butts up against ours, and they just kind of come through the weak spots. Because
yeah, actually, I think I heard that theory associated with the Loveland frog. That's actually a very interesting theory. I mean, I've never looked too hard into it, but I think that parallel universes might exist. It'd be cool if they did. Especially if the creatures were able to get through them.
I heard an interview one time with a guy who was in, I want to say, he was in one of the jungles, and I want to say it was like the Amazon or some really dense jungle, and they were with one of the native tribes, and they were going to see something, and they were told, you can only wear black and white, and you can't wear any color clothing, or the spirits will take you away, or something like that. And they have stories where people will go walking through, and they'll be wearing something other than black or white, and they'll be taken away, and most of the time they don't come back. And I think maybe one time somebody did come back, but there was one guy who he was wearing green socks, had the shorts like they do because it's the Amazon and it's really hot and sweaty, and he had green socks instead of black or white. And by the time they got to where they were going, underneath his socks, he had like these cuts all over his legs. And I think that one kind of played into passing through to different dimensions, because the legend was that they would come through and grab you off to their world or their spirit plane, or whatever the native tribe had come up with to explain it, basically.
Yeah. Actually, somebody wrote a book and published it a little while ago. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but basically it goes into detail about all these different places in the world, pretty much. But his last one was specifically about North America, where people just tend to go missing. They'll be walking along, hiking with people, and usually the last person on the line will just go missing. Or people will be out in an area that they're familiar with, like berry picking. He said it happens a lot with berry picking for whatever reason. And they'll just go missing. And sometimes they'll come back missing articles of clothing and completely confused about where they're at or what happened.
I think
he said that Pennsylvania was like a huge hotspot for that.
Actually, I think that that matches up with some of the older stories about fairies and stuff like that, where like if you would offend them, they would snatch you up, or they would do something to you. I don't know. Maybe we should do something about fairies. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, especially up in Greenland.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's something like a 67% of their population
Oh
being the
yeah, and
fairies.
I mean especially like through Pennsylvania and stuff like that. A lot of the Dutch magic or the Dutch witches, the
Yeah,
tradition that's been passed down. I guess in some circles they're called like kitchen witches, but it's mostly through like Pennsylvania and the little Dutch communities there that fairies play in a lot into the lore there. It's kind of like a mix between um, more kind a little bit of paganism, but mixed with Christianity in some spots. So it's kind of like this weird mix that kind of
yeah,
coexists. But if I remember correctly, I think fairies they played kind of a big part in all that. I was thinking
yeah.
maybe
No,
we should do something on that sometime.
yeah. And what people really don't understand about class like
Right, right.
Tinkerbell, they kill you. So I mean, it's not like these cute little things that fly around and want to help you out. They usually trap you and
Right.
kill
Yeah,
you.
I know there's I've come across a couple different variations on them like, even the ones that you would think are supposed to be kind of like I guess sparkly and, the way that you would see it in a fairy tale. I mean, even if it was something like that, if you make them mad, they will, basically wreak havoc on you and you'll have bad luck for the rest of your life and, people around you will die and you'll go broke and,
Yeah,
stuff like that. So, I mean, even when they're supposed to look pretty and dainty and friendly, if you do anything to offend them, then you're basically in a world of trouble.
yeah. But what's really interesting about this book, from what I read, I didn't actually read the book. I was just reading about it. Is that he was able to pinpoint different areas. I mean, within like a mile radius of where more people would go missing. I mean, it was just really interesting how it would happen. Like how people would just go missing for like 2 weeks. People that normally couldn't fend for themselves and would have died of dehydration or starvation, and then would just come back and not understand what happened. Um, but I mean, he said that I think I remember Pennsylvania is a huge hotspot for that, but they're like different national parks. Like he narrowed it down to different areas in
Really?
them, and he said I think I even read about a report of one person who had property out west somewhere, and they'd been, or maybe it was in Pennsylvania, but anyhow they knew these woods, they'd grown up in them and all that, and they were walking, and they just got really lightheaded at some point. And they're like, man, this is kind of weird. And then they looked around and didn't recognize any of the woods that they were in. So they very carefully backtracked until the feeling went away. And then everything was back to normal. They recognized where they were at and all that. But between that point and where they had the lightheadedness, they had no idea where they were at in those woods. Nothing was
Yeah, that
familiar.
sounds like I don't know, like slipping through a weak point or something.
Yeah.
I think if I could if I could if I could like pinpoint a place like that, one place that was really like if I could find a place that was almost, sure to be able to do that, I think I would probably have to go and investigate.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, if you were slipping through to something else or, would you be able to take like a camera or something?
Or would you ever be able to
Right,
get
yeah,
back?
that's another question.
Yeah. Um, I read this theory out there before that says that ghosts and all that aren't really people that have died. They're pretty much from a parallel universe that's buttoned up right up to ours. The same people and all that in it. That just follows a slightly different timeline, and sometimes the line wears through a little bit, and you might see somebody you knew or somebody else completely, and they it just comes through as kind of fade as a faded out image
Right.
of them.
I actually really like that theory. Just I don't know, I've always kind of liked the idea of being able to of there being more than one universe or dimension and possibly being able to go back and forth between them.
Right. And that's one of the ones I I can kind of jump on board with more. I actually read about a girl who said she was in her kitchen or something getting some food or whatever, and she turned around and she sees this woman dressed in formal wear standing there like she's in the kitchen doing something completely different, like getting a glass of water or something. And the woman looks at her, and she said that she got horrified, like the ghost looked at her and like got really scared, and then disappeared. So I imagine us wearing through to the other side, where everything physically is the
Right.
same, but there might be a different person. Somebody else might have bought that
Right.
house.
So on the other side, that person's, telling everybody, "Oh my God, I just saw a ghost."
Yeah, I just saw this teenage ghost making a sandwich in my house. What do I do? Should I buy different
Yeah.
bread?
I don't even buy that type of lunch meat.
All right, it looks like we're coming up on an
Yeah,
hour
you
now.
want to go ahead and call it a day?
Yeah.
All right,
All
take
right.
it easy.
You too. Bye.
Hey, I just wanted to thank everybody again for listening, and if you'd like to be part of the show or you have an experience you'd like to share, go ahead and go to wotb.blogspot.com. On the left-hand side of the page, you'll see some submission links. Go ahead and contact me in any way that you like, and we'll see what we can do. Also, if you'd like, you can go to facebook.com/WOTB show. Go ahead and like our Facebook page. Not only does it help get the word out, it also makes us feel special. So thanks once again, and keep your eyes and your mind open, or you just might miss what's out there.